In 1974, two men met in a palace in Saudi Arabia. What they agreed on that day would change everything. Because from that moment on, oil and US dollar became inseparable. It sounded boring at the time, just paperwork, but that deal created something extraordinary. It created a rule that every country, whether they liked it or not, had to follow. Because from then on, if a country wanted to buy oil, it needed dollars. If they wanted to trade, they needed dollars. If it wanted to loan from the World Bank, dollars again. This is dollar trap.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed.
Okay, let's start. Wait, where do we start? 1944. World War II is almost over. Europe is in ruins, Asia is burning, and the only country left standing rich and powerful is the United States. Why? Because America isn't just strong militarily. By this point, it owns almost 2/3 of the world's gold. You heard it right, 2/3. How? That's a whole story for another video, but let's come back. The world needed something stable to rebuild the economy. So in July 1944, leaders from 44 countries gathered in a small town called Bretton Woods in New Hampshire. They needed a new financial system, and so they made a deal. Every country would tie its currency to the US dollar, and the dollar tied to the gold, fixed at $35 an ounce. So trusting the dollar was good as trusting gold. This arrangement was called Bretton Woods system. But by 1960s, cracks started to appear. America was spending like there was no tomorrow on Vietnam War, on new social systems, on trying to be the world's policeman. They always do. And other countries noticed. They looked at the dollar America was printing and thought, wait a second, does the US actually have enough gold to back this? Especially France under President Charles de Gaulle decided to test the system. They started demanding real gold instead of paper dollars. And ship after ship began leaving New York Harbor carrying away gold bars. By the early 1970s, America's gold reserves have collapsed from 20,000 tons at Bretton Woods down to barely 8,000 tons. By 1971, America's worlds were running dangerously low, and that's when President Richard Nixon went on television and made a stunning announcement.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
Just like that, the promise was gone. So after 3 years, in 1974, two men met face to face in Saudi Palace. One side King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, ruler of the richest oil kingdom on earth. On the other, US Treasury Secretary William Simon, representing a superpower desperate to keep the dollar alive. The deal they struck was deceptively simple. Basically, oil for dollars, dollars for protection. At that time, it sounded like paperwork, but in reality, it was genius. Because once Saudi Arabia agreed, the rest of OPEC followed. Okay, wait. What is OPEC? It's basically a club of oil-producing nations that got together in 1960 to control the oil market. And OPEC controlled nearly 80% of world oil exports. That means whether you are in India like me, or Japan, or Brazil, you couldn't just pay for oil with your own currency. First, you had to get US dollars. So entire countries started hoarding dollars. Central banks filled with vaults with them. Global trade from cars to coffee beans began to flow in dollars too. Those excess dollars that countries were collecting, they didn't just sit around. They flowed back to America buying US bonds, stocks, banks, and companies. This cycle had a name. This is petrodollar recycling. Dollars went out to buy oil, then came back home to fuel Wall Street. By the late 1970s, the dollar trap wasn't just about oil anymore. It had become a global lifeline and a weapon. Institutions like IMF and World Bank, both are dollar-based. So when countries are in crisis, facing debt, inflation or economic collapse, they had only one option: borrow US dollars, but on US terms. For example, in 1980s, Latin American nations were drowning in debt, paying dollars to survive.
Inflation shot up nearly 100% in 1982 alone. The peso collapsed to 1/5 of its former value, and unemployment climbed to 12%, with another 30% able to find only part-time work.
Their debt held by the 8 largest American banks amounted to 250% of the bank's capital.
If the banks had been forced to write down their loans before they had sufficient capital, it would have wiped that capital out and we would have had a banking crisis.
And the whole purpose from 1982 to basically 92 was to get the country back on track, get the banks to get their own reserving system fixed, and stop making loans on balance of payment loans to countries that can't pay them back. And it worked.
In 1997, the Asian financial crisis forced countries to take dollar loans, ceding control to global institutions. Even today, developing countries borrow in dollars, not their own currency, keeping the US at the center of global finance. Every dollar flowing through the system strengthened American grip. Every crisis forced nations to follow its rules. The trap isn't just economics now, it's political leverage. The dollar trap has ruled the world for decades, but now the game might be changing. Meet BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. These countries are rising, their economies are growing, they have huge population. Their energy needs are huge and they are asking a question that makes the US nervous. Why not trade in our own currencies?
Now, since the end of the Second World War, the American dollar has been the backbone of global finance. But that dominance appears to be fast slipping, and leading the efforts are the BRICS nations, a group that is accused by American President Donald Trump of harboring anti-American policies. Now, last year, Donald Trump had threatened 100% tariffs on BRICS nations if they ditched the US dollar. And this year, he has threatened to slap 10% additional tariffs on countries that align with the BRICS nations. De-dollarization is Trump's and the US's biggest nightmare. Russia and China are stepping up their efforts to build alternative financial and payment systems, while India's Unified Payments Interface, one of the most advanced digital systems globally, is being extended to neighboring nations. Now, China is pushing its own cross-border digital payment platforms. These moves are part of a broader shift as countries are seeking to reduce dependence on the US dollar.
If they start doing that, the petrodollar system could weaken. Suddenly, countries wouldn't have to hoard dollars. Global trade could bypass the US and the flow of dollars back to Wall Street might slow.
De-dollarization is something that's being talked about a lot. The one thing that the United States does not want to happen is for de-dollarization to become a reality. Do you think Donald Trump is now setting out the steps that are needed to ensure that the rest of the global economy is tied closely with that of the US dollar? Or is he, because of the fact that he's alienating his friends, in many ways hastening the process of de-dollarization?
Yeah, I don't think Donald Trump is helping, but he's not the cause of this. The American system, the dollar-based system put in place at Bretton Woods in 1944 and throughout the Cold War and the post-Cold War era has been fraying for some time. It's falling apart. The WTO isn't doing what it's meant to do. Even the United Nations is a bit of a failure on many levels. And so it's not surprising that the cornerstone of that arrangement, the dollar as the global reserve currency, is beginning to fall apart.
But even if the system changes, it doesn't disappear overnight. The dollar trap isn't just about oil or gold. It's about centuries of trust, habit, and global dependency. Breaking free will take time, strategy, and risk. For now, the world watches closely, but one thing is clear. The trap is real and it's still shaping the fates of several nations. If you like what you saw, please subscribe. Also, I want to know your opinion on the dollar trap. Take a minute and comment down below. Like and share this video if you like. Thanks.